All right, so we do have a couple of example problems that I wanted to do with you, just so that we can keep practicing this together, and then hopefully you guys will be ready to do a few problems on your own. So the problem here that we're going to start with is 2n squared minus n minus 3. Okay? So with our map, first steps we're going to do is to simplify, rearrange, and remove the greatest common factor. So with this problem, simplify means that we're going to combine like terms. There's nothing here to combine. Rearrange means that it's in standard form, and it is, so we don't have to do anything else. And remove the greatest common factor. There is no greatest common factor here. So that means that we take our map and we're going to move straight down into the trinomial section. And then we're going to attempt a factor test. If our factor test has a square for an answer, then we're going to move on and do a backwards FOIL and go ahead and factor this. If it does not end with a square, then we'll call it prime and we'll move on. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is our factor test. So b squared minus 4ac. So our b value here is -1. Our a value is 2. And our c is -3. Okay. So here was the -1 value right here. Remember, that's an understood 1 if there's no number. -4, here's our 2, and here's our -3. All right, so we're going to plug all of that into the calculator. So -1 times -1 is +1. -4 times 2 is -8. Times -3 is +24. And 25 is a square, so we can factor this. So we're going to go step by step through our factoring process. So the first step is to find two factors whose product is equal to a times c and sum is equal to b. So we want two numbers. When we multiply them, they equal a times c, and when we add them, they equal b. So multiplying a times c, a is 2, c is -3, so we need two numbers that multiply to equal -6 and add to equal -1. So multiply to equal -6, add to equal -1. So let's look at factors of -6. We have 1 and 6, 2 and 3, but we need a negative, so -1 and 6 and -2 and 3. If we add those together, we're going to have 5. We add these together, we end up with a +1. So we're close. Let's try -6 and 1 and -3 and 2. And if we multiply those together, we get -6. If we add them, we get -5. If we multiply those, we get -6. And if we add them, we get -1. So these are our two numbers. Multiply -3 times 2, we get -6. Add them together, we get -1. Okay? So second step is we're going to expand the trinomial into a 4-term polynomial and group the terms into two binomials. So expand them. We're going to take 2n squared minus n minus 3. We're going to expand this into these two numbers. So 2n squared minus 3n plus 2 minus 3. Okay, so all I did was take, all I did was take this -n and split it into a -3 and a +2, which is still going to combine together to equal -n. So we expanded that, and now we're going to group it. So 2n squared minus 3n, those are the first two terms, plus 2n minus 3, those are the second two terms. Okay. Third step is we're going to remove any greatest common factors. So here, greatest common factor is n. If I take n out here, 2n squared divided by n is 2n. And if I have -3n divided by n, I end up with -3. And then here, I don't have anything to take out. There is no greatest common factor, so we just use the value of 1 and keep everything inside the parentheses the same. Okay? And the final step here is we're going to separate what you have into two binomial factors. So first I take the two that are the same. So 2n minus 3, that's one value. And then I use my leftovers, n plus 1, n plus 1. Those are my leftovers. So these are the two binomial terms that should be the factors of this trinomial. Remember, we repeat the process of the powers are not 1, but power is 1, power is 1. So we should be good, but the final step is to prove our answer. So I'm just going to prove it right here. I'm going to do 2n minus 3 multiplied by n plus 1. So first two numbers, 2n times n is 2n squared. The outer two numbers, 2n times 1 is 2n. The inner numbers, negative 3 times n is negative 3n. And the last two numbers, negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Then we combine our like terms, so 2n squared minus n minus 3. That is what we started with. So these two factors are the correct answer. Okay, so that's one example that we can do. All right, so the second example, let's look at this one. X squared minus 9x plus 12. Okay, so if we look at this one, remember we start with our process. Simplify, rearrange, remove a greatest common factor. So to simplify, there's nothing to combine, so we can move to the next step, rearrange. It's already in standard form, so we're good on that. And remove a greatest common factor of 1, 9, and 12. The greatest common factor is just 1, so we can leave it alone. Okay, so we're good in the top three steps. Now we can move straight down the pipe to trinomial. We're going to do a factor test and see what we get. If it's a square, we move on. If it's not, we call it prime. So let's do our factor test. So we're going to do b squared minus 4ac. So our b value here is negative 9. Our a value is 1. And our c value is 12. So if we multiply these together, negative 9 times negative 9 is 81. All right, and then we have a negative 4 times 1 times 12, which is going to be negative 48. And if we do 81 minus 48, we get 33. 33 is not a square, so this cannot be factored any further. We're just going to have to call it prime. Okay? So remember, always do that factor test because you don't want to be trying to find two numbers that multiply together to equal negative 9 and add to equal 12 and realize that you don't have anything that works. So always do that. We'll do a couple more examples in the next video, but for now, just remember that even if it seems like I'm going speedy, you can always stop the video, go back, watch something again, make sure that you get it. Stop and ask me questions, give me an email, give me a call, something along those lines, and I'll be glad to help you with it.